tilt it forward. That'll help a little bit. There we go.
Hello and welcome to LSU Baseball Tournament Update. I'm Patrick McGee, and I'm joined here by advocate columnist Scott Rabalais. We're here to talk about the big LSU-Kentucky Super Regional. We've been here last couple of weeks talking LSU baseball, sponsored by Hancock Whitney, and now's really kind of when it starts to count. You know, you kind of thought LSU would get through that regional, and now they've got Kentucky waiting for them at Alex Box Stadium. Scott, how would you grade LSU coming in, compared, just based off the performance you saw in the Baton Rouge Regional? Sorry, Scott's mic is going quiet on us for some reason.
Sorry about that.
That's now we're good. Okay, go ahead.
Nothing like doing video on the fly. I always say I have no backspace button when we do video as compared to when I write a story. I thought it was very important that LSU get through the regional undefeated, that they not fall into the losers bracket and have to really extend, go dip deeper into their pitching staff, into their bullpen, which obviously has been shaky at times this year. But I thought overall, a good solid B+, and B+ is good enough to win a regional. They hit well overall. Obviously, Skeens was tremendous in his start against Tulane, and most of the pitching was okay. And they certainly had to deal with the adversity of the number 2 pitcher, Ty Floyd, getting to throw 3 innings. This 3-hour rain delay, and they've got to piece it together on the back end, and they piece it together in the regional final against Oregon State. So I thought LSU did a very good job. Defense was pretty good. Overall, just real solid. I think this team can still be a little better at times, and especially in the pitching department. But I think what they did, if they play like they did in the Super Regional, I think they're going to Omaha.
You had a column that ran today about Dylan Cruz, about kind of where he stacks up. But you think there's kind of a next step for him to be considered one of the best ever for LSU?
Well, he's way up there. Obviously, I've been watching LSU baseball, since when I went to school at LSU in 1984 was just when Skip Bertman was arriving and just starting that ascendancy. And I remember going to a game with my little league team in the 70s, and there was hardly anybody there, Mm-hmm. And they didn't win very much. Yeah, I think in 75 they won the SEC, but it was very rare. And so over that time, it was about all the great players have played in my field of recollection. And he's way up there. I mean, he is right at the very top. And certainly, literally, he's at the top. Going into the Super Regional, rather, he's hitting .432. That is the best batting average in school history if it holds up. There's only been 4 other players who hit over 400 in a season. And they're all Americans. Todd Walker, Eddie Furnace, Russ Johnson, and then Rafe Rhymes, who hit .431 in 2012. But to be considered the really, really best, you got to do something. I mean, there's a high mark in this program, Patrick. I mean, it's fair or unfair. There's a very high standard, and the standard is you got to get to Omaha. And the standard is if LSU, which has won 46 games to this point, if they don't make it to Omaha, this is going to be a disappointment. And the standard for Dylan Cruz is if he goes through his 3-year career at LSU, and he's leaving, obviously, after the season because he's probably going to be the number 1 draft pick next month, then there's going to be kind of a mark, on his ledger. They're going to say, yeah, he was great, but, all those other players I mentioned made it to the College World Series, and all of them but Rafe Rhymes won a national championship. And I think he's the most talented player I've seen. The only player I think rivals him is Joey Bell, who played for LSU back in the 80s in those formative years. He was tremendous, and he wanted to have a year in the majors with Cleveland where he hit 50 homers and stole 50 bases. He was that kind of talent. Could run, hit, throw, and of course Cruz can do all those things. But Bell is kind of probably a lot of modern LSU baseball fans don't remember him because they didn't win a national championship when he played. He was in their first World Series in '86. Dylan Cruz needs to get there and do his best to lead LSU to greatness. And if he can do that, he's going to be remembered the way Billy Cannon is remembered in football, the way Joe Burrow is remembered. But like I said, it's a high standard, but it's one that he is within his reach because he is a tremendous talent.
What are your thoughts on the LSU lineup as a whole coming in? They scored plenty of runs through the Baton Rouge Regional to get to this point. But how do you see them kind of responding? And is everybody kind of at their best coming into this Super Regional?
Yes and no. That's the nature of baseball, right? Just not everyone's going to be humming on all cylinders, and that's true for I think any of the 16 teams that are playing in the Super Regionals this weekend. And I would say two cases in point. I think most players are hitting well. Tommy White, the third baseman, not hitting as well. He got some hits against in the regional. Not to say he didn't, but swung at some really bad pitches. I mean, way up here out of the strike zone. His while a few weeks ago when towards the end of the regular season, he was just a terror. And it was Dylan Cruz who was maybe kind of struggling at the plate. And Tommy was it looked like he was just so dangerous at the plate that he was just going to hit an extra base hit every time he got up there. And right now that's not the case. But then you have a player like Josh Pearson, who had a couple of he had homers and triples. He's hit the ball all over the place in the regional, made the all-regional team, playing in left field for LSU. And he's not someone that you count on in the 9-hole to be doing that. So, but you balance it all out, and they're hitting pretty well. But it sure would help if they could get Tommy White, who is batting behind Dylan Cruz in the two spot, back on the beam, because it just makes LSU's offense even more dangerous. And if LSU can be a high scoring team in the Super Regional, I think they've got Kentucky's number, because although the Wildcats beat LSU 13-10 in April in the middle game of their series here, they're not going to do that very often. So I think LSU can get all those stats working as much to their advantage.
Yeah. And to me, the position that's probably not talked about most in the postseason is catcher. And to me, it's got to be the most important, really, to kind of control the game. LSU's got pretty good options there. They've got, Travinsky and Milazzo. How do you think they should approach this kind of moving forward with Travinsky hitting it so well right now?
Yeah, I mean, Travinsky shows you again what a great talent Cruz is. He just sort of has everything, a 5-tool player. And Travinsky hitting the ball great, batting .427 for the season in somewhat limited action. He hasn't batted as much as Cruz or White or Trey Morgan, but hitting the ball real well now. They trust him in the cleanup spot, in the fourth spot in the batting order. But he's not the greatest defensive catcher, and lets the ball get away from him sometimes. Is not as great at throwing runners out. And Kentucky likes to run. They've got 91 stolen bases and 120 attempts this year. So that's a really, they're going to be running on LSU. That's their game. Get hit by a pitch. Both teams get hit by a pitch a lot. 256 combined hit by pitches coming into the Super Regional. Get a hit by pitch, butt a guy over, try to get him in. With something with wild pitch, pass ball. Whatever. They're not going to stand and just pound the ball like LSU is wont to do. LSU only has 29 stolen bases by comparison. So the question is, do you make Travinsky your DH and put in Alex Milazzo, who's also hitting pretty well, 296 for the season, not terrible, who's got a much better arm, is a much better defensive catcher? Do you make that substitution and sacrifice someone else's bat? Well, someone else is going to come out. And so Cade Beloso has been DHing in the regional. He homered in the last 2 regional games. Mm-hmm. So it's a tough it seems to me a tough question. Maybe for Jay Johnson and his staff, it's not a tough question. I suspect they're going to stick with Travinsky, and they don't want to lose Beloso's bat in the lineup. But it's gonna cost LSU at some point, most likely. And not to pick on Hayden too much, because he's played very well, but it's probably going to cost them, some extra bases, putting runners in scoring position for Kentucky. And that's a trade-off you have. Like I said, it's hard to have everything in baseball. And in this instance, LSU doesn't, and they're going to have to kind of pick the lesser of two evils to go forward against the Wildcats, knowing that they either get more runs probably, or give up more runs to Kentucky.
Right. I think Jay Johnson even said before the season he would have a lot of tough decisions to make. this year, and I guess it's at this point it's tougher than it's ever going to be. Going into Super Regional, just the feel for this LSU team. This is a Kentucky squad that beat 2 out of 3 earlier this year. Baseball can be unpredictable. How do you see things playing out?
I think it's a. I think. I think you'll go the distance, but I think LSU prevails. Look back to the April series here. LSU ruled them in Skeens starting the opener. Kentucky won the middle game. LSU won the last game by 1 run. I think it could be a very similar series. Kentucky, they are a scrappy bunch. They fought out of the losers bracket, had to come back and beat Indiana on their home field in Lexington, no question. But had to come from the brink to come back and win that regional. And they're a team like they've been in the top 3 in the RPI nationally, all season long. And you're like, well, what is this Kentucky? Well, they win. They play a tough schedule, and they've been up to the challenge, quite a bit. If not winning, then giving you a hard time and making you earn it. I think they're going to make LSU earn it in this series. I think. Obviously, it's hugely important that LSU wins. We could have talked, maybe a day or two ago about are they going to pitch Skeens in game 1 or game 2 because the weather looks like there could be rain. But now right now the weather forecast for Saturday looks good, so I would imagine they'll go with Skeens in game 1. Got to win that game, and then you just have to split the rest of the way. And I like LSU's chances of batting 500 again, playing 500 ball against Kentucky in the next 2 games. But it might come to that. It might well come to that. I would not. I would not sleep on Kentucky at all and think that they're going to be just some kind of pushover for LSU in the Super Regional. And it wouldn't shock me if Kentucky won, but I think LSU will prevail in 3.
Okay. Well, this has been the LSU Baseball Tournament Update brought to you by Hancock Whitney. Appreciate Scott joining us. If things play out as expected, we'll be talking about Omaha next week, and we'll be back here with more of these LSU Baseball Tournament updates. I appreciate you joining us, and Scott, we'll see you there at Alex Spike Stadium this week.